Hey everyone, in this screencast I'm going to be creating a Ruby on Rails application from start to finish. I'm going to be creating a basic checklist where a user can sign in and sign out and create new checklist items that will appear in this checklist. Each checklist item can be marked as complete, it can be deleted, and the checklist that the user sees is going to be unique to only the items that user creates. So for example, if user 2 signs into the application, he will only see the items that he created. So he will only see his personal checklist. Another thing, if there's no user signed in, we're going to have this this amazingly styled Jumbotron here with some basic welcome text. So without further ado, let's get into building this application. To begin any Ruby on Rails application, you have to start by, well, creating the application. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cd into the location where I want to create my application. I'm going to run the command Rails new followed by the name of the app I want to create. In this case, it's going to be checklist. So you run the command, and what it's going to do is it's going to fetch all of these files, and it's going to create a basic bare bones structure for your Ruby on Rails application. And what's awesome about Ruby on Rails is it's going to give you so much functionality right out of the box, and it makes doing stuff, complicated tasks, really easy. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cd into the checklist. And now I'm also going to be using Git, so I'm going to initialize a Git repository, and I'm going to run a Git status to see what I have. I have all these untracked files, so I'm going to add those files to be tracked. I'm going to commit those files with the message initial commit. Alright, so let's get into building this application. Now, what we have is we have a checklist, and the checklist is full of items. So what we're going to start with is we're going to create a model, Rails generate model item. And now this is going to generate an item model, and it's going to have a corresponding table in the database called items. And each item is going to have a title, which is a string, and it's going to have a description, which is going to be text. So this is going to generate a item model with a title attribute and a description attribute. And the title is going to be a string, and description is going to be text. So I'm going to run this command, and what it's going to do is it's going to create a migration file for us. It's going to create the items table, and it's going to create an item model file. So what we want to do is we want to open up our application in Sublime Text. So we'll go into screencasts, and we'll open up our checklist. And I'll make that full screen. As you can see, we go into our migration, and we have the create table items, and we have a title and a description. And this line right here, this deals with the created at and updated at attributes, which we'll touch on the created at attribute in a little while near the end of the video, but you don't have to worry about that too much right now. So what we're also going to do now that we created a model is we have to run rake db migrate. Now what this does is it updates your current application database. So when we generate a migration, which we will see later, and when we just created that item model, what we need to do is we need to run this command to upgrade or update our current app database. So we'll see an error later on. I may purposely forget to run this command, and it will say pending migrations. If you ever get a pending migration error, just make sure you run your rake db migrate, and that'll take care of it for you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create an items controller. Now a controller is the brains of the application, and I'm going to do Rails generate, and you can also just run Rails G. It does the same as generate, so Rails G controller items. Now what this is going to do is it's going to create our, well, items controller. And in our items controller, if we go back to Sublime, we'll be able to define actions, and these actions will correspond to the views, and they can access our model, they can access our database. So it's kind of a go-between between the views, which is what the user will see, and the model, which is where all of our data is going to be. So all the checklist items will be in the database. So that's the items controller, and what I want to do before I add any actions is I want to add some Ruby gems right away. So this is actually the old app, so ignore that if you will. And actually that reminded me, I want to go into my terminal, create a new tab. I'm going to run a Rails server right away. Now what a Rails server does is it creates sort of a local viewing environment for your app. So if you go to localhost 3000, you'll see welcome aboard, you're running Ruby on Rails. This means Ruby's working and we're ready to go. You'll be able to see where you need to go by viewing, where is it? Right up here, localhost 3000. If you go to that on your PC, you'll be right where I am. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to get the Ruby gems we're going to use for our application. I'm going to use one's called simple form. This is what I'm going to use to gather data from the user and create the checklist items. So what you can go is you can go down here to Gemfile, click copy to clipboard, and we're going to go in to our Gemfile and we'll clean up all of this. Now what the Gemfile does is each gem in itself is sort of like a mini library in that a gem provides functionality to your application. So this is probably tediously boring watching me do this, but the comments are actually helpful if you ever want to read them. And we'll paste in simple form. Now what we need to do when we add a new gem to our gem file is we need to run what's called bundle install. Now I'm actually going to fetch one more gem quickly. For styling purposes, I'm going to use Bootstrap Sass. I'm not the most design inclined person. I'm working on it, but Bootstrap Sass is just a gem that allows us to use the Bootstrap styles, and it's ported from the native less to Sass, the Sass pre-processing language. So now that we have these gems included, what we need to do is we need to install them for use. So we're going to run bundle install, and that's going to tell us to use those. See, it says using simple form. That tells us that we can use, and using Bootstrap Sass, we're using those gems for our application. Now we didn't have to do that at the very beginning because if you looked at the terminal output, bundle install is actually automatically run when we first start. So what we need to do now is we need to prep our gems for use in our app. So let's just take care of Bootstrap really quick. We won't use that for a little while, but it's good to get it out of the way. So we're just going to import those into our style sheet. And actually, we need to rename that .scss. And that didn't work out well. Let's save. I don't know what the heck happened there. Okay, so we're going to import the Bootstrap right there. And we are going to grab this, which goes into the JavaScript. So JavaScript application.js will include that. So right now, Bootstrap is ready to roll. And one thing, when you include Bootstrap, it's always smart to restart your server because it just helps, I guess, recognize that we're using Bootstrap. So now that we have Bootstrap ready to roll, we're going to go and get the simple form gem, which we already have, but we're going to look at the documentation here. And to use simple form, we actually need to generate an install. And since we're using Bootstrap, right here is the one we're going to use. Here's one if you're not using Bootstrap. The only difference is this Bootstrap flag right here. So we'll run that in our command line. We'll do Rails generate simple form install, and we'll add the Bootstrap flag. What this does is it installs the simple forms functionality, and it allows us to use, well, actually will give it native Bootstrap styling, so we don't have to do as much styling in the end because this video is going to be long enough as it is. So what we're going to do now is, now that we have our gems in and ready to go, we're going to start by creating a route route. We're going to look at our route file and create routes for our application. So right now we have all these comments. You can just get rid of those. The comments that are given to you by default from Ruby are actually very helpful. So they're good to read through if you need any pointers on anything. So if we run a command called rake routes, this will show all the routes we have in our current application. And currently we don't have any defined because this file is empty. So what we're going to add is called resources items. And items references our items controller. And what this is going to do is it's going to generate the routes we need for our items controller. And you'll see we have an index, we'll have a new item, we have create, edit, show, all these. And when you reference these, so when we create our root path, you do it in this sort of syntax. You add the controller and the action. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a root path, which is going to be the items controller. I'm going to use the index action. Oh man, index action. And what we do now, we check out here, we'll get an action is missing, action index cannot be found. So what we need to do now is we go into the items controller and let's add an index action. And Rails, you don't need to have, even though this is an empty action, we really don't need anything in it right now because it will still allow us to render a view. But right now we don't have our index template, so let's go in and add that. If you go into your app directory, views, items, you'll see that the folder right now is empty. So we can go into our items folder right here and we can create an index.html.erb view file. And now this view file is what's going to correspond to this index action right here. So now if we actually go over, we won't get this error, but we'll get a complete blank page. And it takes a little bit when you first add your first view. Not really sure why, but there we go. We're rendering the view. So just to make sure we have the right one, we'll just say index view. Yay. So we'll add that and we should see that text. Awesome, there it is. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add functionality to create new items. We're going to add functionality so that when we create a new item, we will then list all the items in the index view, which is the one we just created. So also, if you've used Bootstrap before, you can tell we have the Bootstrap styling just by the font there. So that's working pretty nicely. So let's add that functionality. What we're going to do to start is we'll do this right away. We're going to add what's called a partial file. And a partial file in Rails is denoted by an initial underscore. We'll just call this form.html.erb. And to use, like I said, when we create a new item, we're going to use the simple form gem. And here's some basic usage on the GitHub page. We'll follow this pretty much similar. So we'll just do actually add the corresponding end tag right away. And we'll do simple form for, this will be for an item. I'm going to do F. Now we haven't defined @item just yet. I will get to that right after we define this form. So what we're going to do is do f.input. As you can see, this is the syntax I use. Input is just an input field. So we're going to have the user input a title. And I'm actually going to change the label so it just says item. By default, if you don't put a label, it'll take on title as its label, as I'm going to do with this one, but with description. So I have to input description. Now, these input fields are input fields for the attributes of our item model. If you can remember, when we created items, we have title and we have a description. So we'll also add in f.button, which is just a submit button. Now we're going to go back into our items controller. What you do with partials is, now we have a form partial. There is no, if you look here, a new item corresponds to the new action. So we're actually going to render this form partial in the new item index view. But we'll add that in a little bit. We actually want to add the action first. So we're going to go add a def new. And def new and def create kind of go hand in hand. New is going to, like I said, it's going to be related to the new.html.erb file we're going to add, the view. And create is sort of the, you can think of it as the action. So when we click create item, it's sort of the action right there. It doesn't have a view in and of itself, but it's still very important. It actually is what creates that item. So we'll define what the @item is. The @ just denotes an instance variable, and let's do @item.new. And now that we define what a new item is, and we define what that @ symbol is, we'll be able now, as you can see right here is @item, we'll be able to reference that and not get an error. But if we go to the new item, item/new, to create a new form, you will see that we won't actually have anything. So I'll just go show you that right now. /items/new. We're missing the new.html template. So we'll go back, and all these tabs are getting a little tedious. Go into items, views, and we'll create that new.html.erb. And we'll add a little header saying new checklist item. And to get that form partial that we created, we'll create a render. We'll render the form. Now if we go back here, we'll have the header along with our little form there. And this is something that you run into sometimes. I'm not really sure why, but if we simply just restart our server, that form should have had the Bootstrap styling. But if we just restart the server and then reopen the page, we'll have that Bootstrap styling. And see, right here's the button, here's the item input, and here's the description input. So now, if we try to create an item, we're going to get an error because our create message isn't actually creating anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to @item gets an item.new, and it's going to take something called the params that require the item or the model name, and we're going to permit the attributes we want, and we want both of them, so we'll do title and description. And now if we try to create an item, we're still going to get a template is missing error. So if we go in here and we say mow the lawn and a little bit of filler, create the item, we're missing the create template. Now we don't want create to be a view in and of itself, so we're going to redirect if it's a successful save. So if item.save, we're going to redirect to, we'll just redirect to the root path, which is that index action that we did earlier. And if it's not successful, render a new form. And now if I go back and create item, there it is. Now we're not showing it yet on the index, but that's what we will do right now. So if we go back to the index action, we're going to be able, actually before that, right here, create and new are pretty similar, but create takes the params that we are basically entering into the form and it puts it with that instance. And we're actually going to be using this sort of params here a couple times. So we're going to actually add a private method. And we're going to define it as item params, and we're just going to put that right there. And then we can reference that right up there. Awesome. So now what we want to do is when we create items, we already have one item. We want to be able to list out the items from the most current at the top to the oldest at the bottom. So what we're going to do that is we're going to define an instance variable called items, and it's going to get item.all. So it's getting all the items in the model, and it's going to order them by created at, which is an attribute that the item has by default, which is actually created by I'll just reference that really quick. I showed this earlier. The created at is actually made with this, so don't really worry about that right now. But created at descending. And now we're going to go into the index file, and since we have this @items instance variable, we can reference that in our index view. So what we're going to do is we're going to do kind of a Ruby block here. Items dot each do item, and we're going to end that right away just so I don't make a mistake and get an error like that. I always forget to end, and oh, my typing's so weak. Okay, what we're going to do is we're actually going to wrap this in an H2. Ruby code can be wrapped inside HTML, pretty basic, and we're going to do the item title. Now right here, item represents each instance of items. So like I said, we're getting all the items, and each an item represents one instance of that. This is sort of like a loop. And then we're also going to add the item description. And man, my shift action is pretty horrible. Item dot description. And there we go. So if we now go, we're getting the item title and the item description, and we're outputting that to the index view. So if we go to our root page, which is our index action, we'll see mow the lawn. Awesome. So if we create a new item, items new, pick up groceries. So we want bread, cheese, and pasta. I don't know. That's just came to mind. And there we go. See, we're looping both of them. We're listing both of the items out with the most recent up top. So now what we want to do is we want to add the ability to view a single item or show an item, and to edit, delete, update, all that fun stuff. So what we're going to do to start is we're going to add the ability to view a single item. Now we can actually go into the terminal and run rake routes again. I don't think we added anything. Actually, I know we didn't, but okay. So what we have for show is it references the ID or the URL items / the ID. So we start off with, this will be ID of 1, and this will have an ID of 2. So say we want to see the second one, pick up groceries. We can reference items / 2. And this would actually show the item, but we don't have the show action. So what we can do, we can go into items controller, and we'll add def show. And that, what we need to do in the show action is we need to find the item that we're gonna show, obviously. So what we do is we do @item gets item.find the params ID. Now this line of code we're actually gonna be using a lot. We're gonna be using it for the show action. We're gonna be using it for edit, update, destroy. So actually right away we're gonna do what we kind of did down here. And I forgot the parenthesis. So we're going to define this as actually find an item. We'll find item, and we'll paste that in, and add that second parenthesis. So right now we're also going to add what's called a before action. Now before action does a specified action right here, and the action is going to be find item, and it does that action before basically anything happens, to put it simply. And we're only going to do that for show, edit, update, and destroy. Now we don't have the three of those yet, but we will. So right now, if we go back to show, we will see the, we have a syntax error for action. I forgot a colon. As you can see, the Rails errors are very helpful. And now we're missing the template, which we didn't add yet. But we are finding the item. We're finding the item by params ID in the show action. So if we go back to items and we create our file, we'll just output the item title, and we'll also do the item description. @item.description. Now this @item instance variable, as I stated earlier, corresponds to this. Because we are finding an item for the show action, this @item instance variable is available in our show action. So if we head over and refresh, now we will see that the item with the ID of 2 is pick up groceries, and there it is. So now we want to add the ability to edit, delete, and we'll actually add a link to go back, so we don't have to keep typing in a URL. So let's do that right now. So on the show page, we're going to have an edit link, a destroy link, and a backlink, so we can sort of navigate a little bit before we add our navbar. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off, we're going to go back to the items controller, and we're going to add a handful more actions right here. So we're going to edit, do update, and we'll add destroy. Now for edit's going to be similar to show, where all we're doing is just finding the item. As you can say up here, find item, edit. So that'll be finding the item, which is represented by @item. Update, we're going to do if the item updates with the item params. So you can kind of think of the item params as being what the user types into the simple form. So if the item updates with the new item params, so if you change the title or the description, that'll be referenced here. What we're going to do is we're going to redirect. I'm going to redirect to the show page. Now the show page, if you reference the rake routes, is just item. But whenever you redirect to something, you always have to add path. So we'll redirect to item path. And the item path is with respect to the current item. You can't just have an item path because you have to show a specific item, and we're specifying that with @item. So else, we're going to render a new edit form and end. So now what we need is updates similar to create, in that it's the action that happens in the edit view. Create happens in the new view, update happens in the edit view. So let's add that edit view right now. Edit.html.erb. Let's actually clean up some of these so you guys can see a little bit better. See the file name. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to add a little header that says edit checklist item. And what we're going to do is, what's really cool with Ruby on Rails is we can actually just render the form, and you would think that the form would be empty, but since we have the item params and we go to items/2/edit, we'll have the form already filled out, which is awesome. So when we update, this should work. Let's say we also want I don't know, what do we want? Spinach? I don't really know if anyone wants spinach, but we'll add that. As you can see, we redirected back to the show view, the item path, and we are updated with the new item, the new change we made, which is awesome. So that's not working great. Now what we really want to do is we want to add links so we don't have to keep typing in the URLs, but right before we do that, let's add the destroy functionality. And since we are finding the item for destroy, @item is already available to us, so we'll just do @item.destroy. It's sort of self-explanatory, and when it's destroyed, the show page will technically be gone, so we can't really redirect there because it doesn't exist. So we'll just do redirect to the root path. And now let's add links for this functionality. Let's start off with a backlink. We'll get some practice here with links. And now I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but what a link to tag does is it creates an anchor tag. So in HTML you have your anchor tag. In Rails you can just create that with the link to. So we'll link to back, and we're just going to go to the root path. Now we're going to link to edit, link to edit, and edit takes on the edit item path, but it's with respect to the item. And remember, @item is available because we are finding the item for the show view. So that works there. And we'll add the delete, I think, yeah, I call it delete, destroy action, but I'm just going to call it delete. Delete item path, which is the show, essentially, but it's going to be with respect to the item. We're going to have a method of delete, and we're going to have a data. You don't have to worry about what this stuff means, really. Are you sure? Method delete is just ensuring that we're deleting it, and data confirm is a little annoying pop-up that will appear saying like, are you sure you want to delete this? And we're sure. So we refresh. Here are our links. We can go back and forward, and actually I forgot to add one link for the show. So if we go, and I would delete one of the files I use. That's me. I didn't even delete from the top. I didn't actually delete it, but I'm going to link to, this is the index page, so the index titles that you're seeing, we're actually going to put a link that takes you right to the respective show page. And we can actually just use a shortcut for the path here because item actually corresponds right to the show path. So if we click on pickup, actually just do mow the lawn. Click on mow the lawn. We'll see this here. Let's just make sure edit still works. Mow the lawn, bro. Why not? There we go. And if we want to delete it, we'll click delete, and it's gone from the index page. Awesome. So at this point, I want to, well, right now we have the ability to create new items, and I don't have a link for that yet. So let's, before we install Devise and add some users, let's make sure we have a link to create new posts or new items, sorry. So we'll just do another link to new item, and go figure, right when I delete the text, I need it. So what we're going to do, new, which is new item, so new item path. New item path. We'll just create a couple more items for return, just a couple more items so we have some stuff to work with. Return movie by 5. I don't know how many people actually rent movies, but let's do it. And we'll add one more. Mo. I've been doing this a lot, as you can as you can see. We actually don't need a description, so we'll just leave it like that. So right now we want to add the ability to add users to our app. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to rubygems.org again, and we're going to get Devise. Devise is probably the most tried and sort of, I'd say maybe even easy to work with, sort of user sign up and authentication system. So we'll just grab that gem, we'll head over to, actually clearing up some of these folders, we'll head over to the Gemfile, and we will add it. We'll just add it in, Devise. And we can head over to the home page, see what all we need to do. First we need to run bundle install, but let's just see right here. Rails generate Devise install. So do do bundle install. This will be using the Devise gem. Awesome. Now we want to do Rails generate Devise install. Make sure that's right. Rails generate Devise install. Awesome. So this will install the functionality, and right here it's telling you some setup you have to do. Don't have to worry about number one, right? For our app, we already have a root, and these right here are when you sign in and sign out. It'll say you've successfully signed in, you've successfully logged out, or any other sort of notices that you'll get. We'll add that to our application layout file. Now I haven't actually touched on this yet. The application layout file is awesome. It's one of the things that kind of drew me to Rails. I mean, I'm sure other frameworks have it, but the yield right here, this is actually where, if you look into the folder structure, the edit view, index view, new, show, all of these files get inserted right in here at yield. Everything else around it is sort of common to each of those views. So this will actually be available to all of these items views. So that makes it pretty simple. And 5, Rails generate Devise views. We're actually going to use that. The reason is because when we do Rails generate Devise views, it allows Bootstrap to be automatically integrated with it since we're using Bootstrap. But you don't have to include this if you're not using Bootstrap. You really don't have to. It adds a lot of files we're not going to even touch in this. So just to show you kind of what all was created, you have all these views. I think we're going to look at a couple of them just to apply a little bit of styling at the very end. But other than that, you don't have to worry about those. And to finish off with Rails generate Devise model. And what we're going to do, model actually just represents the name of the model we're going to use. And in our case, it's going to be a user model. So Rails generate Devise user. And this is going to create, again, our user model. As you can see, Devise create users. The users table is what we're going to have in our database. And to apply that to our application, we'll run a rake db migrate. And actually, I showed you what would happen if I didn't have that yet. So if I refresh, undefined method, well, we still have to run the rake db migrate. Sometimes after you install something like Devise, yeah, you have to restart your server. I'm not really sure when exactly you have to restart your server, but if you ever get an error that you kind of think you shouldn't be getting, yeah, odds are something with the server. So right now, one thing that Devise does, as we can check our DB, our Devise create users, you got a lot of stuff you really don't need to worry about right now, but as you can see, it creates the users table. And if we go into our routes file, it also creates a lot of routes for us. So routes for signing up, logging in, signing out. So if we go to rake routes, it will show us all the routes that we have available to our application. So right here are some. We'll use sign in a lot, we'll use sign out, and we'll use sign up. We're not going to worry about password or cancel or anything like that. So yeah. Okay, so at this point what we want to do is we want to add a user. We want to add a user to our application, because once we have a user, we'll be able to associate users with the items that they create. So let's actually go ahead and I shouldn't have deleted that. Let's go ahead and get the URL for signing up a user right here, /users/signup. So let's go to /users/signup, and let's, as you can see, we have the Bootstrap style. That's from the generating the Devise views, and we'll just do this doesn't have to be a legit email for actual deployment, and if you want to add some more authentication, it would have to be, but there we go. Now we're successfully signed in. That's where the alert notice messages is going to go. So what we want to do now that we have a user signed up, let's add a little bit of styling. Let's add a navbar so we can reference the routes that we're going to be using a lot, like creating a new item, signing in, signing out. Let's add a navbar so we don't have to keep manually typing in URLs. So we'll actually do that in the application file, so the navbar is available to our entire application. So let's go nav. Now I'm using Bootstrap, so to save some time with styling and to make it actually look semi-tolerable to start, in this reference navbar, I'm going to be going through these styles right here. I'm just going to kind of swing through this kind of quick. The nav of class navbar. Actually, no, it's navbar default, and then we're going to add another Bootstrap class container. All these classes are actually just Bootstrap classes. So in the navbar header, we're going to add the sort of brand image. If you look at Bootstrap, this little bigger text, we're just going to say checklist, and that'll link to the root path that we're going to use. But that goes inside a class called navbar header. And let's link to it. Like I said, the link to tag will automatically generate an anchor tag, so this will work pretty well, and we'll just link to the root path. So if we actually go to our browser right now and check that out, we'll see little navbar styling there, and you can also add classes here just with the class navbar brand. I mean, this could be any class you want, but the syntax is it follows the path name, and this will add a little bit more. Yeah, nice little style there. So one thing I do want to add is when a user is signed in, I don't want the user to see the login option because they're already signed in. If they're signed in, they should only see the sign out, and they should see the ability to create a new message. If they're not signed in, they should only see login and sign up. So And users signed in will also see sign up in case they want to make another account. So what we're going to do now is get out of the navbar header, create an unordered list, which is going to have the class navbar nav, which is going to be sort of our links. We're going to wrap a link to, oh man, that capitalization. So we're going to link to, this one's going to be sign up, and this is going to be available for users who are signed in or signed out. So I'm not going to add a conditional around this. And let's reference the route we need for signing up a user. New user registration. New user registration path. Okay. So again, if we reference, we'll have a little sign up link. Awesome. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add a conditional, a Ruby conditional. And what this is going to check is it's going to check if there is a current user present in our application. So current user, not present. This is basically just going to ensure that there is a user logged in, and if there is a user logged into our application, we are simply going to link to sign out, because if they're logged in, they have no reason to log in because they're already logged in. All right, so sign out, and again, just reference the rake routes. It's a good thing to keep it up. Destroy user session. Destroy user session, and whenever you're destroying or deleting something, include the method delete. There we go. And add an else. So if the user is not present, so if nobody is signed into our application, and I forgot the output, link to login. And login, I believe, is just new user session path. And I actually forgot path up here. Make sure that you involve path whenever you're using a link to, because if not, you will get an error. And just don't do it. New user session path. And there we go. So if we go over here, I forgot to put that in a list item. A lot of coding, especially with Ruby on Rails and incorporating HTML and CSS, a lot of it's just trial and error. So if you don't get it instantly, it's all right. All right, I found out my mistake. I just added I forgot to add a list item tag to this. So I apologize. That was a rookie mistake, but there we go. So since we're signed in, we see the sign out. Now if we sign out, we'll see login. Awesome. So now we'll just sign in again. Cool, and we get the sign out. So I also want to add for another if a user is signed in. So this is also checking to see if a user is present. If a user is signed in, I also want to link to the new item. So I can remove that from our index view and just keep it up here in the navbar. And the path is going to be new item path and class of navbar. And there's navbar text, navbar link, navbar right. These are all just Bootstrap styles, so nothing too serious. And since we're signed in, we now get the new item. And if we sign out, it'll be gone. All right. So now with the ability to sign in, sign out, all the good stuff, we need to add a user ID to the items. Now, when we add a user ID to the items to edit existing database tables, we're going to use what's called a migration. So do a Rails generate migration, add user ID to the items table. And we need to specify that the user ID is an integer. So Rails generate migration, add user ID to items, user ID integer. Awesome. So once this is ran or run, my English is probably pretty bad, we're going to do a rake db migrate to basically enforce those changes, and there we go. So if we go into our migration, here you can see we add user ID to items. User ID is an integer and it's being added to items, the items table. Cool. So just to ensure that that actually was correct, let's go into the console. The C just stands for console. Got a connection, and we will see right here, user ID, integer. Awesome. So what we want to do now is, so you just get out of that for now. We want to create the items with respect to the current user. So we want to build out the items for the current user. And we can do that by making a change in our items controller. We can go new. So right now we're just creating a new item, but it's not with respect to the current user. So what we need to do is actually first let's create what's called an association. You create an association between two models with text like this. So a user is going to has many items, and the item, item belongs to user. Awesome. So we can get rid of those, and let's clean up a little bit of these files that we don't need. Okay, and index, we can actually get rid of that since this is the navbar. Cool. All right, so yeah. All right, so we're going to build out a new item from the current user. So we're going to do current user dot items dot build. The syntax is kind of self-explanatory. We have current user, and we're building their items. So create's going to be the same exact thing, but we're going to keep the item params, which is what's being passed into the form. So now when we create an item, it's going to have a current user value. So if we go into the Rails console right now, and we look at items that we created before we made that change, so any old item is going to have, let's just do item gets item dot last. User ID is nil. That was the last one we added, and it was mow the lawn. So if we go in and create a new item now, and we do say clean out MacBook. Oh, the spelling is real. Clean out MacBook. And now we reload the console, and we do that again. The user ID now has a value of 1 because the user that is currently signed up, his ID is 1. So when we create a new user, that user will have an ID of 2, and any items that he creates will have a user ID of 2. And this is the basis for what we're going to use for filtering the index for only a user's checklist. So now that that's working, let's actually reference the other item. So item dot first. And what we can do to, instead of just deleting them, we can just do at item dot user ID gets 1. And then we'll save that item. So now it's an item from the user ID, from the first user, I mean. So item dot find 1. We don't have that. Some of these we deleted. That's that one. Find 3. That one's nil. So right now I'm just using the up arrow to do these commands pretty quick. This part's kind of just tedious. Was that mow the lawn? No, it wasn't. So we have one more. There we go. Item user ID is 1, and we'll save that. Okay. So now all of our items are associated with the user that's currently signed in. Awesome. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to create a new user and begin filtering these items at the index file. So let's go ahead and sign out here. Let's just create a new user. Let's do John Snow. Fubo. Little password. All right. So really we don't want these to be shown. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make sure that this guy does not see the other user's checklist. So to do that, we're going to go to the index action. So we're going to change what items are actually being presented to the view. So it's not going to loop through every single item. We're going to change what it's actually looping through. So we're only going to grab the items where the user ID is equivalent or equal to the current user.id. So the items where the item ID, item user ID, is equal to the current user ID. We're going to order that again by created at descending. Okay. So now if we refresh, there we go. Jon Snow has no items, so he shouldn't see any. So if we create one now, let's do clean dishes. Make sure there is soap. Create the item. There we go. So clean dishes belongs to him, and none of the other items have a user ID of 2 besides this one. So all he's going to see is clean dishes. Awesome. Okay. So now we're going to run into an issue where if we sign out, we're going to get an error. Okay. No undefined method ID. And this is happening because when there's no user, you can't call ID on current user because current user is nil. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that there's a user signed in before we even do that. So we're going to go to the index file, and actually we're going to go to items controller first. We'll have to do this to the index file as well, but before we even set items, we want to make sure that there's a user signed in. Oh, I don't want to define, sorry. If user signed in, if the user is signed in, then we will grab an items instant variable, which will consist of the items from that user. And now, if we head back and we refresh, we'll get another error saying each does not exist because items doesn't exist either. So we're not going to loop through if there's no items variable. So we'll just add the same conditional to the index view. And that voice crack was pretty legendary. If user signed in. If the user signed in, we'll do all that, the fun stuff there. And we'll end. Cool. Now, what's going to happen is we'll get blank. We'll get a blank page. And we really don't want that. We want to welcome users who aren't signed in and new users, because if a new user came to this site, it'd be pretty underwhelming at this point. So what we're going to do is create a partial file, and we're going to render that in if there's no user signed in. So right here, actually, we'll do that right now. So if the user is signed in, we're going to loop through and display that user's items. And if there's not somebody signed in, we're just going to render static, we'll call it static landing page. Now we need to create that corresponding static landing page in views. Let's just do layouts actually. Save that. Underscore static landing page .html.erb. Again, it's a partial, prefix it with the underscore. And since I actually put that in the layouts file, which might be a little bit better practice, just reference layouts/static landing page. And we'll refresh, and it'll still be blank. Okay, so now we just want to add some very basic stuff to this. And I'm actually just going to use some Bootstrap stuff. Jumbotron. Again, this is all on Bootstrap, but to save some time, I'll just insert it myself. So welcome to your checklist. I'll add a paragraph, and that will simply just say keep track of your stuff. And let's also add a couple buttons so users can see if they should sign up or sign in, all that fun stuff. So it's new user registration path. This is probably some pretty boring stuff watching me type, but I need to log in then, which is new user session path. And that should be good. Let's refresh. And there it is. Let's add a little bit of style to buttons here. It's pretty hideous. Again, we'll just throw in some Bootstrap stuff. BTN primary. This is just adding button classes to these links. Even though we have the buttons up here, it kind of draws a little bit more attention down here. But there we go. Now we have a static landing page if no one's signed in, and if we sign in with a user, we should get our items. There we go. Awesome. Okay. Now that we have our items being filtered correctly, we have the ability to sign in, sign out, we have some basic navigation, and we have the ability to edit and delete. We're now going to focus on adding the ability to mark the items as complete. And to do that, we need to start off by generating a migration. So we'll do Rails, generate migration, and we're going to add completed at to items, and completed at will be a datetime value. Now this is similar to when we added user ID to items. Instead of adding user ID, we're adding completed at. And what we're going to do with this in the future, when we add some methods to it, to our items controller and to our actual item model, we're going to be able to check if the item is completed, if it has a value, and we'll be able to specify how we're going to set that value. So we'll generate migration, add completed at to items, completed at datetime. Awesome. And again, we'll run a rake db migrate to enforce those changes. And now we have a completed at. Head into db, check out the migration. Completed at is datetime, and it's added to items. Awesome. So what we want to do now is I'm actually going to specify the items controller method first. So we're going to define what's I'm going to call complete, and we will use these methods in a little bit. Complete, we're going to find an item, item.find by the params ID. Now I could have just added complete to the before action, but I don't know, I feel like doing it this way. So, and what we're going to do is we're going to update the attribute of that item, and it's going to be completed at with time.now. So what this is going to do is it's going to take the item, and when we call the complete method, it will update the completed at value, which will initially have a nil value until it's completed, and it will update it with the current time. And time.now is a datetime object. And once we complete it, we'll redirect to the root path. Alright, so another method we want to define is going to be actually in our item model. And this one's going to be just going to define sort of what completed is. And completed is if the completed at value is not blank. That's what the bang symbol means. It means not. So an item is completed if completed at is not blank, meaning if it's not null. Okay, so now, right now we don't have a route for completing the item. By default, it doesn't add anything here for a migration. So what we're going to do is we're going to do resources items, and we're going to nest something in there. We do member do. And what we're going to do is we're going to patch. Oh, that spelling is on point. Complete. Patch complete. Now, patch complete, this right here references the complete method we defined in the items controller. So, what we're going to do now is simply just add a mark as complete link to each of the items that we're looping through on the index page. So we're just going to do we'll just use some text for now. In the end, we're going to use an item to make it look a little bit cleaner. And actually, we need to check if the path was actually made. So when we added those nested routes, it should add a complete item path right here. Complete item. As you can see, the verb is patch. That's why in the routes page we're using patch complete. So really, the complete method in the items controller down here, it's very similar to update. They have the same verb. They both are patch. So you can kind of think of them as acting the same exact way. Okay, so we're going to finish out this. So that was complete item path. Complete item path. And it's going to be with respect to the current item, which we get through the block here. And the method, so whenever someone clicks on that link, we're going to call the patch method, which then references the complete action in our routes file, patch complete. Okay, so now let's just also add a delete link, because that's where our delete's actually going to be. Delete, the item path is just going to be item method delete data. We're going to confirm, are you sure? And I can actually delete that now from the show page, since that's kind of duplication. Okay, so let's actually head back over and see if it's working. Cool. So we have mark as complete and delete, and actually, just for styling purposes, I want to add these in a paragraph so they're stacked for now. Alright, awesome. So now if we click one of these as mark as complete, so first let's just grab the last, let's go into the Rails console and let's see if our mark as complete is actually going to work. So item, it's item dot last. Okay, clean dishes. That's actually the other user. So let's actually just grab one that we have right here. Alright, mow the lawn. Mow the lawn, complete that is nil because we haven't completed it yet. So if we click mark as complete, we come back in here, we reload, we do at item gets item.find4. Right now, since we clicked complete, we have completed at with our datetime object. This just says exactly when I completed it. So we have a function. We have the ability to mark something as complete, and just to make sure delete works, we'll delete the clean out MacBook, and it works. Awesome. So our functionality is essentially complete. At this point, it is styling. So what we're going to start off with is this next part's not going to be very clean, and it's going to be a little bit a little tedious, but all I'm going to do is just add an if statement in our index page, and I'm going to say if item dot completed, which is the method here. So if an item is complete and it's marked as complete, I'm going to add some specific styling to that. So I'm going to add specific styling to these items. So what I'm going to do is add an if statement up here. I'm going to add some space so it's easier to see. If item is completed, which is referencing that method we have, we're going to do this stuff. And this needs an end, actually needs an else as well. So then if it's not completed, we're going to run code in here. Now what I want to do when it's completed, I want to add a line through the title, which I can do with a strike tag. And I also want to, let me just make sure something really quick. Okay. I also want to add some opacity. And now you can just add some style with the style tag in HTML opacity, let's do 0.5. It's just going to make it lighter so it kind of looks like it's complete. And we'll add the same thing to the description. And something actually that I should have added maybe earlier is I want to add a timestamp. So if an item is completed, I don't want it to say created at. I want to say when I completed this item. So the instant I clicked mark as complete, I want that to be timestamped. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, let's do completed time ago in words, and we're going to reference the item to a block item dot completed at. So it's just going to get the completed at attribute of the item, and it's going to format it using time ago in words. So we'll do ago. Okay, so that's that, and that's also going to have the opacity once it's complete. Cool. Alright, and one thing we're going to do really quick. Right now, marked as complete is text, as you can see here. Actually, I want to refresh this really quick. Okay, marked as complete is text. So what I want to do is change this to be an item. So I'm going to use something called a font awesome. But first, I need to make some changes quick. So we're going to link to complete item method patch. I'm going to add a block afterwards. Now, don't worry if this syntax is a little weird. It's still weird to me. But what we're going to do is just add an I tag. And these classes are specific to font awesome. Large FA check. Oh, do not want that. Okay. Same thing with delete. Instead of saying delete, it's simply going to say, so you're going to add do, and oops, and I tag. Classes is going to be the same, except this is going to be a trash can. Man, my typing's pretty weak sauce at this point. Okay, so now these should be gone. Okay, now we have some styles. Which, the reason we only see the marked one right now is because we didn't even add an else yet. So before we add font awesome, let's copy this. This is why I'm saying this is not very dry right here. These will be the same. Get rid of the opacity because I want them to appear normal. And we'll get rid of the strike tag as well because we don't want to strike if it's not done. That would be totally counterintuitive to what I'm doing. And instead of completed at, we'll do created at because it hasn't been completed yet. Okay, so if we refresh, oh, I want to refresh that. If we refresh, we get a little syntax. Unexpected keyword else. Okay, yeah, I was missing an end statement. This is why it's kind of tricky using embedded Ruby and HTML with Bootstrap. There's a lot of div tags, a lot of stuff, so it's easier to mess up. There we go. All right, so these are marked as this one's marked as complete, has that styling, and here's our timestamps. Return movie was created 42 minutes ago. Pick up groceries was created an hour ago, and if we actually click complete, which actually isn't showing because again we have the font awesome styles, but we don't have font awesome yet. We do not have font awesome, so we just go to font awesome, little Google search, getting started, and just put this right in your application layout file. So we'll go to views, layouts, application, right there, and if we go back and refresh, there we go. So let's say we completed this, let's delete it. Works, return movie, there we go, and as we see, the created at changed to completed at. Awesome. So with that, all the functionality is now complete. Now we're just going to spend, well, I'm going to spend a little bit of time adding some Bootstrap styles so the CSS is a little bit less confusing. I mean, it might be a little bit cleaner to just use CSS to achieve this, but I'm a little bit better with just structuring HTML, I guess, than CSS. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a lot of space so it's easier to see. I'm not sure how the quality is going to turn out with this, but if the item's completed, we're going to wrap all this content here in a row. So we'll do a class row, and now, like I said, this is Bootstrap styles. So we'll do div, and we'll indent that a little bit. Actually, yeah. And we're also going to add a class of item to identify each of these as an item. Okay, let's add a div here. This will be 8 columns wide. And that will just be the content. I want the content to be 8 columns. And then I want each of the items to take up 2 columns. Column medium 2. The thing with Bootstrap is everything needs to add up to 12 columns. Well, it doesn't have to, but that's the limit with the sort of the native Bootstrap framework. So column medium. And if you use Bootstrap and you're probably screaming because this isn't going to be too mobile friendly, I'm really not super concerned about this being mobile friendly. I'm just trying to get this done as quick as I can for you guys because I know you guys have stuff to do. So right now, as you see, we added a row, added some sort of weird styling there, but that's sort of how it works. And I'm going to do the same thing down here. Put these in row item. The item class is going to be targeted by my default styles, so that's where that's going to come into play. Not doing anything right now, and then this will be again column medium 8, and that's just going to be the content. It's right here. I do apologize if this is hard to see. It's even hard to see when you're working on it. And this is going to be call medium 2. I'll actually just copy that so I don't have to type it all over again. And we'll indent that. And do that again. Alright. So I'm going to actually give a lot more space here so you guys can see what's going on. I feel bad because this is probably hard to see. Let's add some stuff there. I probably should have added some comments to see where everything ends, but if we refresh, we'll now have some styling. It'll all be even and good to go. There we go. Now what I want to do also is I want to surround all of this in a div. This is just going to make it stretch a lot less. It's going to be more condensed to the middle. We'll do column medium 6, call medium offset 3. And this div will go right here in between these. And if I refresh, this will now be more compressed to the center, just like that. Awesome. And I want to go to application quick, our layout file. I want to surround the yield with another Bootstrap class called a container. Put that in there. Now I actually, yeah, I gotta do it manually. That would add a little bit more styling, compress it a little bit more. And now everything that I want to be compressed into this sort of 6-column centered offset, I'm going to want to put that around the content. So I'm already signed in, so if I go sign out, I go back to sign in, I kind of want this to be have a column around it as well. So let's start off. Let's go to show should be like that. So we'll do class gets call. I really should have copied that. Call medium 6, call medium offset 3. And so I don't have to bore you guys to death with all that. Close that. New with the same styling. Oh man, the typing is getting pretty bad. Index. Oops, I shouldn't have closed that. We already did index anyway. Edit's going to be the same. And let's see. Let's go back to here, refresh, and we actually need to target the login. This is another reason why generating those Devise views is nice. New user registration. This is when we sign up. We want to surround that with this to center the content. And new user session is for logging in. Okay, so let's go back and make sure. There it is. We have a nice centered style. Let's log in with him. Got a nice centered content there. The checklist is centered. So now all that's left is to add some CSS styles, which I am going to copy in from. If you go to GitHub, so go to my GitHub application CSS, select all those styles, and we'll go into our style sheets, paste that in. And one thing that I do want to make sure of is that I go back to index, which I exited out of. Index, and these H2s, I want to add a class so my CSS can be referenced with them. Item title. This will have a. This also applies to that H2. This is going to have an item description and an item subtitle class. This again is going to be transferred down here, and you can also put it here, but just get rid of and create that, and then add time ago class. And once again, that'll be referenced down here. And that should be good. So we head back here to our checklist, hit refresh, and there's our styles. Awesome. Just added some Google fonts to clean it up a little bit. Okay, so just to make sure that these styles are continuous, Ryan example, which they will be. I just want to ensure that everything's working good. There we go. So we have some styling. We have when it was created. If it hasn't been marked as complete, we have a little completed at timestamp, description. We still have the functionality to delete, and we have the functionality to mark as complete. All right, there we go. I want to thank you guys for sticking through this video. I know it was a long one, but I hope you guys learned something. If you have any questions about anything that happened in the video, please leave them below. If you have any comments, concerns about the video itself, please don't hesitate to comment. And if you like the video, please give it a like, and I will be sure to do more of these, actually a good bit more of these kind of videos. So if it was helpful, please be sure to subscribe, and thank you guys so much. See ya.